All right, chapter 15, the last chapter. There's a few questions. You can pause the video to answer them, and then there's an afterword from the author. Chapter 15. Corinna pressed her hand against her mouth. She wouldn't give those pigs the satisfaction of hearing her cry. As she listened to the car roar down the street, an uncontrollable trembling settled deep within her. It sent shockwaves out to the furthest extremities of her body, so that her hands shook and her legs quivered. Even her lips trembled against her hand. "It's all right," she heard her father say to her mother in a comforting voice. "Hush, my love, hush." Corinna felt her own tears start to flow. She crawled through the feathers and splinters which now littered the floor. Gently, she picked up Tag. The kitten quivered and then seemed to shake herself awake. Corinna smiled through her tears and kissed Tag on the nose. Her parents wrapped their arms around her and they all gave in to their tears. Even her father cried, something she had never seen him do before. Nothing mattered anymore. There was nothing left to care about, or so it seemed, Corinna thought as she looked around her destroyed room. But of course, there was a lot to care about, she corrected herself. She cared about her parents and the Krugmans, whom she'd never see again, and about her fatherland. There was a lot of caring left to do, she realized with relief. Her tears were fewer now, and they dried on her cheeks, making her skin feel stiff and uncomfortable. She looked up to see her father's tears had been wiped away, as if they had never been. Just like the Krugmans, she thought, like all enemies to the fatherland. They were being wiped away so that some day it would seem as if they had never existed. "We have to leave now," her father said quietly. "Where are we going?" Corinna asked. "It's best if you don't know until we get there, Liebling," her father said gently. Corinna stroked Tag's silken head. "We're leaving forever?" "Maybe we can come back someday," her mother said. "But right now it's too dangerous to stay," her father said. "What about my school? What about my friends?" Then she remembered she didn't have any friends anymore. Only Eva had been brave enough to be her friend at the end when she'd really needed one. "There will be other schools and other friends," Corinna's mother said reassuringly. Her father rose to his feet and helped his wife up. "We have to hurry and pack. Take only what you absolutely need. We'll be traveling a great distance tonight." Corinna stood up beside her parents. "How will we get there? I've hidden bicycles out back for just such an emergency." "But won't they be watching us?" "They won't expect us to leave tonight. Hans will think we feel too scared to dare escape. Or maybe he thinks we are stupid enough to feel too safe." Corinna reached out for her mother's hand. "I'm frightened." "That's okay," her mother said. She drew Corinna close to her and hugged her tightly. "We're all frightened, but that's natural. It's when we feel at ease and certain of ourselves that we make mistakes." Corinna thought about how she had felt so confident yesterday that Rita was a true friend. Rita felt sorry for the Jews, and Corinna had been glad to hear it. She'd actually believed it. Instead, if she had been frightened and wary, she never would have said so much to Rita about her feelings for the Jews. She was certain that was what had instigated this search, that in her black book. "Hurry," her father said. "The sooner we leave, the better. Put everything in your book bag," he added, pointing to the leather bag half buried in the debris. He looked at the kitten in her arms. "Where we are going, you can't take a pet. We'll have to leave Tag with friends along the way." Corinna could only nod mutely in reply. Her mother gave her one last squeeze and then followed Erim out of the room. Corinna went to the hanging picture of the Führer and took it off the wall. Tied to the back of it were Rachel's drawings. She put them in the bag. She looked around her room. What else did she need? She gathered some undergarments, a sweater, a wool skirt, and an extra scarf. All of this fit into her book bag with hardly any room to spare. She found a few sheets of paper and a pencil in the mess on the floor and stuffed those on top of everything and closed the leather bag. Taking the bag with her and tucking Tag under her arm, Corinna walked to her door and shut off the lights. Looking back, she could barely see in the darkness that immediately took over her room. But that was better. In the dark, she could imagine her room as it had been before all this. But no, she didn't want to remember it before the Krugmans as if they had never been there. She looked to where her wardrobe had stood. The hole in the wall was darker even than the room. It looked like a gaping wound. Now she had to leave. She didn't know where she was going, but she had a feeling it was going to be her turn to hide behind someone else's bedroom wall in a dark, small hole with barely enough air to breathe. And if she never came back to this house, it would be because she couldn't bring herself to finish that thought. She just hoped she would meet the Krugmans again someday in the future when all people were free to speak and act without fear. Suddenly, it dawned on her what could possibly be just as important as love, if not more so: freedom. She ran to tell her parents. This is an image of the back of their house that was in the book, and I guess the bikes that are hidden. So pause the video and answer these questions. Send me your answers. 1, what does Corinna realize about Rita? 2, how has Corinna changed throughout the book? And 3, what does Corinna now believe may be just as important as love? When you finish answering these questions, restart the video. Afterword. The story you've just read is about a fictional character named Corinna Rehm. Corinna, like 8 million real children, belonged to one of Hitler's youth groups that existed before and during World War II. Why did children get so involved in their youth groups, even to the point of reporting un-German teachers, friends, and parents? Research and interviews have since shown that these girls and boys were brainwashed into believing what they did was for a good cause. In 1933, Germany was in a depression. Poor and out of work, many people looked for someone to lead them to a brighter future. Hitler promised to do this. Hitler said he would create a strong country in 1,000-year Reich, yet no one knew how he would do this. But because everyone wanted it so desperately, they followed him blindly. Children, especially, were affected. And why not? They had a lot of fun at their Hitler Youth Group meetings. They sang, hiked, helped the elderly, raised money, and baked. They marched in parades and practiced sports. And because Hitler controlled all the radio broadcasts, all the newspapers and books that were printed, propaganda, the children truly believed that they were helping him create a wonderful, strong fatherland. All they had to do was commit their lives to the cause, report anyone who seemed un-German, and hate the enemies. But who were the enemies? Anyone who looked different, anyone who acted different. The followers of Hitler specifically targeted Jews and anyone who helped them, Eastern Europeans, mentally and physically challenged people, gypsies, and homosexuals, to name a few. Hitler's followers murdered over 6 million Jews and millions of other people too before and during World War II. It is estimated that by the end of the war, over 2/3 of the Jews in Europe had been murdered. Well over 1 million of them were children like Rachel. Even knowing they could be killed for helping the enemy, some Gentiles, non-Jewish people like the Reims, especially outside Germany, put their lives in danger to help the victims. 10,000 Rachels may have survived because of these decent human beings. Because no records were kept of hidden children, it's impossible to know if this number is accurate or if as many as several 100,000 children survived. I ended this novel with Corinna's realization that freedom is perhaps more important than love. After all, if you're not free to love whom you wish, what good is love? About the author, Laura E. Williams was born in Seoul, Korea. She's lived in Belgium, Hawaii, and for a few months on a sailboat on the Caribbean. In 1983, Laura graduated from Denison University with a double major in English and art. And in 1988, she graduated from Trinity College with a master's in literary writing, Master of Arts, that MA stands for. She also earned a master's in education from St. Joseph College. She currently lives in Connecticut, where she is a teacher of high school English, which some of that may have changed, considering that was in 393 over 30 years ago. The image I've put here is of a child in a hiding place of someone's home, a Jewish child. Here's an image. I Googled hiding places, and so here's one that came up of a Jewish couple who were in hiding, it looks like in someone's basement. And I wanted to just inform you, those of you who are interested in the subject, maybe you've been moved by this book or you're just thoughtful about it, another pretty famous book about this time, The Diary of Anne Frank, or The Diary of a Young Girl. And this was from her firsthand account. And so that's also a really interesting book. A really good movie about helping Jewish people during this time is called Schindler's List. It's a long movie. It's a little over 3 hours. It is rated R, but if you can view that at some point in your future, I think you would really like it. Okay, that ends our book of Behind the Bedroom Wall, and hopefully it has given you somewhat of an insight into a very small picture of the Holocaust.